If you have to roll a 2+ to charge, don't roll a 1.
Hey guys, welcome to the first video of a 3-part mini-series of battle reports of a tournament I just recently participated in this weekend, and today I'll have the first game. It's my all-melee Nords versus Dweg. I have a Warlord Shaman with Arcane 1 and Arcane 2. The Arcane 1 is just for the extra dice, and the Arcane 2 is to stop any sort of scaling whenever I want to cast a Blurred Vision on an enemy regiment. The first warband has 3 stands of Raiders, 3 stands of Raiders, a Mountain Jotnar, and a Sea Jotnar. The Sea Jotnar I'm taking now is due to the large amount of brutes and monsters that I'm fighting in my meta, and my other 2 warbands are copy-paste. They have a base Jarl with a 3 stand of Raiders, 3 stand of Raiders, and 1 Mountain Jotnar and 1 Mountain Jotnar. So this is a 6 Jotnar list with a 6 Raider regiment list as well. The entire point of this army was that I had bought into a whole bunch of dual kit city-states with other people in my area, and I got saddled with so many Huskarls and Bochosen and Jotnars. Oh my. I wanted to use all my Jotnars. I had a couple of games last week and the week before against a new player, and then a really quick game against somebody else. It's not like I practiced with this list. I just throwing it around for fun, and it seemed very interesting with the balance changes to Nords that came out about a month ago, where the Jotnars now have +1 to march. Also, the lost ability of Blood of the Einhar for the Sea Jotnar is kind of irrelevant, since if I'm using him to hunt monsters and brutes, he gets reroll hits anyway. So it's as if the Sea Jotnar never had Blood of the Einhar in the first place. Even before, when you had it, you still would reroll your stuff. Now I'm kind of wary of sending the Sea Jotnar up against infantry. If I can help it, he won't do that. With his Fiend Hunter, he does pretty dang well against monsters and brutes as a counterplay to other armies. And the Mountain Jotnars with their movement of 7, along with the Shaman's Vanguard ability, is just amazing. So back to my game. At the end of round 1, I had moved Raiders up in the center, and I'd moved more Raiders over here and more Raiders here. Now, as far as the Raiders are concerned, I bunched up the Raiders on the right with a T formation because I knew that even with long edge deployment, with 12 regiments in my list, I knew I would traffic jam myself up big time, especially when it came to charges and angles and engaged stands where you can't charge or move through them. I wanted to make sure that I had a little breathing room, even if it is only a few inches, for my other Raiders and Jotnars to come onto the board to have a little bit of charging space. Hence the T. I have my Warlord right here. That's my Shaman. And I have a Jarl over here. He's currently being proxied by a by the player I'm playing against. He let me use one of his dwarves because I drove. My companion and I drove an hour to this tournament, and I had left my Jarl at home. So the tournament organizer was okay with me using a stand-in. So don't worry about this little traitor here, okay? He gave me all the secrets of the Dweg for the day. And I have my other Jarl over here. So I have all 3 of my characters on the board. And this mission is off balance, as you can see. There are 2 friendly objective markers for me, and then there are 2 opposing objective markers for me here. When you play this mission, for the most part, you forget about your opponent's objective markers. They do not exist because they're so deep into his line that if you are in the position that you're destroying his markers, you've already won. So consider the markers in your opponent's territory as a win more condition. You're only winning more if you're destroying your opponent, which is fine for tournament results when you need the extra victory points. But in off balance, all you care about are these 2 objective zones in the center. That's it. So don't worry about those 4 victory points that you're going to destroy for the enemy objective markers. It's not going to matter. All you're worrying about is seizing the zones, which is 2 victory points each, and then an extra 2 if you seize both objective zones for a total of 6. And the only other alternate scoring is 2 for the Warlord. My opponent has brought on 2 Flame Automata, and then he has a unit of Hold Ballista here in the back. Now, for the Nord strategy is to score early, score as much as possible. which is why I had vanguarded both of these units to get closer to the zone so I can score it. Remember that the Shaman supremacy to vanguard works while the Shaman's off the table, and it will even work after the Shaman is dead. So this sets up the end of round 1. Let's go on to round 2. At the end of round 2, it's just more movement. I am able to move my Jarl just touching the objective zone right there. That's all I need to do to score. And I knew my opponent was out of position to score. Getting that would be easy. Also, keep in mind that with a 15 card command deck, you're going to have more activations after the opponent. So I kept my important activations till the very end. So after I saw how my opponent moved, I would see that his flames moved here and his fire forged with his, I believe this is his warlord here. They moved here. They're not in any physical position to contest the zone. So after they moved, I was able just to touch the zone right here. And my opponent moved his Flame Automata and Hold Ballista right on the zone over here, right? He only has 2 stands on there. I was able to move 3 of my stands. Actually, I think I moved all 4 of them on the zone, including my 1 medium. So I was able to score this one as well. So I was already up by 6 points, which is what Nords want to do. Because once you're up by points, you don't have to commit your frail units into risky maneuvers. Now my opponent has to charge into me. So knowing that, I took a risk. And yes, this is a Jarl, and he is my medium stand. And yes, he is in position to be charged. Little like chess, when you have a Nord army that has 12 regiments, 6 throwaway raiders, and 6 scoring Jotnars who are going to vanguard move onto the board, losing this stand means nothing, and losing the Jarl means nothing to me. It's completely irrelevant. If the gain is worth the loss, and the gain for me, for his Hold Ballista to shoot my raiders, and then for his Flame Automata to charge into my raiders, which brings his Flame Automata closer for my countercharge, which is exactly what Nords are meant to do. We're a countercharging army. These raiders here in the center are angled in such a way they could charge here in case his Flame Automata charge my Warlord and raiders in the forest. As you can see, my army is set up for the countercharge. As a Nord player, I did not just charge into my enemy blindly and just throw units away. I am set up for the countercharge. I'm going to lose regiments. They're going to die. But I'm going to countercharge him in his flank. And we're now moving on to round 3. Whoop! What happened here? Well, his Flame Automata charged my unit of raiders that had my Jarl and, well, 3 stands of raiders on the zone. He absolutely destroyed them. He charged and destroyed the unit, which is fine. That's what I wanted. I countercharged with my raiders and then destroyed his Flame Automata. I just absolutely obliterated them with my 14 whatever attacks, 13 attacks with clashing on 3s. Actually, yes, clashing on 3s and then re-rolling because of flurry. This here is impassable, so this is kind of blocking me a little bit, but I was only able to get 1 stand to go through this hindering forest, which allowed me to keep my impact attack. Hold Ballista fired, killed 1 stand of raiders, and then dealt 2 damage to another one, which left his Hold Ballista now up for a charge during my next turn. As you can see, he's in my front facing. Over to the right, my Warlord cast a spell which stops him from charging me unless he gets within 12 inches of me. Staved off the Dweg charge for at least 1 round. It made his charge less effective. Now he couldn't just charge from far away and then clash afterwards. Now he has to take a risky move charge. Risky because now he just does nothing when he gets into combat with me, and then hoping that his Aura of Death will mess me up. This is water right here. I placed my raiders on the water, contra to his Flame Automata, so when his Flame Automata charge me, they're at -1 clash. Because my raiders are going to die to them no matter what. It doesn't matter whether my raiders are clash 2 or clash 1. That's irrelevant. But as soon as his regiment is down 1 clash, I can then charge him from the sides. And maybe because I only have 1 stand in the water, if anything, I won't get affected by the water. So this is using terrain to your advantage as much as possible. And lo and behold, he did the thing. He moved his Flame Automata up, and then he charged them in. I think he did impact a hit here. That's why I have a little bit of damage on this unit. The unit of raiders I had off to the side then charged his Flame Automata, and without the -1 to my clash. Now, because of the angle of the charge, you can see here, so it may seem a little weird the way we're touching. There is, as you can see right here, you see this marker, and you see how I'm angled this way? When his Flame Automata were here, I had to angle this way So my raiders had to wheel more to be able to get the charge correctly. That's why you have this little touching issue here. Now my raiders are only allowed to fight with 4 attacks for the engaged stand and then a couple supporting in the leader. So I only killed 1 stand of Flame Automata and then dealt 3 damage to the other one. And that's with not even effective raiders. My raiders here activated, took the Aura of Death, took some damage, and then we're able to Inspire and Clash, killing off the last Automata that had wounds, and dealing 2 more to the center Automata. Because I was only Clash 2 because of the water, I didn't do as much damage as I could, but with Flurry it helped out a little bit. And then my other Raiders unit here had to close the gap. They had to push in once the Automata were dead here. Still staying out of the water, and him entirely in the water. My flank is completely exposed here, but that's perfectly okay. I want to get these Automata out of my lines. And this is how the game looks at the end of round 3. I had Vanguard moved Jotnar over here, so I can score this point, or get a 3-stand advantage on my opponent on that point. I Vanguard moved a Jotnar here, so I could score this as well because he had brought his Flame Berserkers onto the point to combat my Raiders and Jarl, so I needed him here. And then I just brought in another Mountain Jotnar without Vanguard right here down the center. And this Jotnar is here to support any counter charge I need. My opponent brought on his Drake with a Sorcerer, 14 inches in, and we were good to go. So I went ahead and scored another 6 points, so I was up by 12. So at the start of round 4, my opponent went first, and we traded some cards. His caster, his Warlord, dealt 17 damage to this Mountain Jotnar, blowing him up and killing him, but that's okay, because then the caster was not casting against the Raiders here. My opponent had the issue that they're going to deal with when facing MSU, multiple small unit Nords. Who do you attack? You either attack the Raiders or you attack the Jotnar, because I have so much junk on the board. Oh yeah, the Jotnar is dead. My Jotnar over to the left charged his Hold Ballistae and absolutely destroyed them, and they're just gone. His Fireforged went, and his Fireforged dumped fire into my Raiders and killed 1 stand and dealt 2 wounds to another, activating my Blood of the Einhar. My Raiders move up towards the center to do some supports. Also, my Raiders here activated, took Aura of Death, killing off a stand. My Raiders from the center of the table moved towards the right, and bam! His Aura of Death killed a couple of my Raiders off. Then my Raiders with the Warlord Shaman against the Flame Automata activated and killed his last Flame Automata. My Raiders also died here, I believe, from attacks, so they were gone as well. And now we have this little nugget here. Everyone just staring at each other. And this is how the game looks at the end of round 4. From the side, I had Vanguard moved 1 Jotnar here with its 21-inch movement, because he had brought, I believe these are his Hold Thanes over here. He brought his Hold Thanes on first to countercharge my Raiders, because my Raiders charged his Fireforged in the flank. I had 2 stands in the flank. So because I charged him in the flank, he brought on a countercharge unit, and then I brought on my countercharge unit. And the way I have these regiments set up is that he cannot charge in the back because he'll hit the Mountain Jotnar, and moving him more than 1 inch would happen, so I'm actually blocking his movement, even if he made contact with the regiment. So it would force him to charge on this side of my Raiders, which then allows me to charge him this way with my Jotnars. There's a lot of counter-charge shenanigans going on over there. Moved off the edge of the table and then turned or something like that. I had also Vanguard moved my Sea Jotnar, and I believe the Sea Jotnar, he wasn't in range to throw a spear at anything, so he's hanging out there. But the Sea Jotnar is here to counter his monster. The Jotnar that was in the center is moving to the right to flank his Drake, because once again, with MSU armies, you want to just inundate your opponent with as many targets as possible, so who knows what he wants to attack, right? So now I have like redundancy here against this Drake. I regular moved a Jotnar over here, and on the left side, my opponent brought on his Dragon Slayers, and I believe these are more Hold Thanes here in the center. Now, because I'm now outscoring him by quite a lot, I have 18 over here, 18 points, and he has 0. My game plan is not to charge into him and then lose my regiments. That's not my game plan. My game plan is to sacrifice everything to score. So my regiments now are positioned in such a way where they're just going to hang out here and wait for him to commit into me. So my 1 Mountain Jotnar could countercharge either to the left or to the right. So as you can see, Nord MSU is all about setting up charges, and it's all about counter charges. It's not about running into the enemy at all. Zero. So everything I set up here is to ensure that I get proper charges in the next round. So this is the top of the bottom of the 4th, so let's start with the 5th round. My Sea Jotnar activated, and I just decided to use him to charge into the Fireforged with his Warlord. And you may be asking, well, Diego, does not open up your flank for his Drake? Yes, it is. If his Drake charges or casts spells on my guy, fine, whatever. Like chess, you gotta sacrifice a pawn, right? And he's just a big old pawn. Because if he charges in, and I have my mountain over here to move charge. So whatever decision he makes, because of the nature of the MSU, he's gonna run into some issues. My Raiders are now free here to move around as well. So just getting rid of that one unit here also scored me 2 points for his warrior. My Mountain Jotnar activated before his Hold Warriors did, and charged them in the flank, and just flipped them off the table. They were gone completely. As you can see here, I had just a little bit of room right here to get in his flank. And as you can see with the table edge, I was able to get in his flank. And this is what the end of round 5 looks like, where I score even more. I score 6 more. And he was very hesitant about moving anything up. He did not move his Dragon Slayers up. I think he charged with his Dragon Slayers, but failed to charge. But either way, he was not able to get his Dragon Slayers into me and his Warriors. Why? Because they either failed their charges, coupled with the fact that I moved my regiment of Warriors here to cover the edge of the zone. So even if he got his regiment right here, he wouldn't score. So I'm blocking him from scoring for one more round. I did not charge his Dragon Slayers with my Raiders at all, because I want his Dragon Slayers to charge my Raiders, which then makes my Mountain automatically charge his Dragon Slayers because of the distance. And I needed the Mountain to stay on this zone to score me the 2 points. Every movement I make is guided by the principle of all of it, all the movement. I score, I deny scoring for my opponent. Score early, stop my opponent from scoring as much as possible. Which is also why my Warlord is just sitting back here in the water. He's not moving up. The Raiders are not doing anything. If I was a smarter man, I actually probably would move them further back to get him out of the range of anything. Because they can't score, they really can't do anything. But that's how you play Nord MSU, is you just gunk up the battlefield with as much garbage as possible to stop your opponents from scoring. So now we're going to go on to round 6, I believe. As I'm doing this battle report, my brain is kind of losing track of what round it is. Let's go on to the next round. My opponent went with his Sorcerer first, I believe, and or Drake. Oh, did they killed the Mountain Jotnar that was here, right? Yeah, okay. Oh, I forgot to mention that, sorry. My Mountain Jotnar actually, one in the center, charged his Drake and did some damage. So then the Drake and Caster activated and killed the Mountain Jotnar that was there. That allowed me to move and then charge with my Mountain here, doing some impact attacks, but not killing his Drake. As I suspected, his Hold Warriors charged my Raiders and killed them, so these guys are not dead. But you see how he's denied being on the point, so he cannot score for that round. The Sea Jotnar turned around and threw a spear at the Drake. With Fiend Hunter, I rerolled a bunch of stuff. And with Armor Piercing, the Drake had to use his evasion, and the Drake finally died. So now my Mountain Jotnars are preoccupied with moving in the back line of my enemy's deployment area to kill his objective markers. As you can see, as I said earlier, objective zone markers and off balance, you just ignore them. They're just a win more for points. Once you're able to destroy these dang things, you've pretty much already won the game. My Raiders went before his Dragon Slayers, and since I think I'm committing this Mountain Jotnar here to the Hold Warriors that are just next to my zone, I decided to gunk him up with Raiders. So he has to waste an activation to clash, and then waste an activation to move. So these guys cannot get anywhere near my mountain. So I'm delaying his Dragon Slayers. But my Raiders ran in and actually kind of messed his Dragon Slayers up pretty badly. I killed the stand and dealt 5 wounds to another one. So his Dragon Slayers are not doing so well. My Mountain Jotnar charged into his Warriors, now further keeping them off of the point. And that was the end of the game. My Mountain Jotnar then killed his Warriors, and that was it. He had, I think, 1 regiment left on the board. And so this game ended with the Dweg scoring 2 points, and the Nords scoring 56 points. So it's a Nord victory. No ranged, all MSU, all melee. Fun times. Really good fun times. My opponent and I had a chat after the game. He's actually the guy that I played Dweg with all the time at Dogs of War Gaming. So he is my main opponent I play with. So we play less against army versus army. So this was not a Nord versus Dweg matchup. This was more of a me versus him matchup. If you guys are familiar with that in competition, if you know your opponent really well, then you're mostly playing against their mind and not the army's strengths or weaknesses. That's game 1 for my all Jotnar, all Raider list. Let's see how I do in game 2 tomorrow. So thank you guys for watching, and remember, when you need a 2+ to charge, don't roll a 1 like my opponent's Dragon Slayers did. Peace out, guys.